Ivy King, the Director of Membership Engagement here at the Puyallup-Sumner Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Luke Corum. I'm the chair of the Government Affairs Committee. I'm also with Bill Corum's Puyallup Nissan.
And today we are interviewing Robin Farris. She is the Puyallup City Council woman for District 1 and is also running again for the same office.
That's right. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Robin. So, the first question, why are you running?
You know, thank you, Luke. That's a really great question. It's right now it's a really difficult time in our district, and a lot of folks have asked me that, but you know, the answer is because it's a really difficult time. I like the challenge, and I think that I have some solutions for some of the bigger, or at least a way forward. I won't say solutions, but a way forward for some of our more difficult issues we face in the district.
So you're...
Oh, I saw our CEO, Tara,
Hi,
is
Tara.
on. Hi, Tara.
Hi,
We
Tara.
miss you. Wish you were here.
Yes.
Hi, Tara.
Kyle Hardkey, too, one of our board directors. Hey, Kyle. Thanks for
Welcome.
tuning in. All right, go ahead with your
Oh,
question.
yeah. So, I guess just a little bit of background on District 1. So you've been there for 4 years. You're rerunning, so it's kind of an off year. You're running in 2019. You have the primaries. There's 3 people running, so you have
That's
the
right.
primaries coming up. What date is that again?
I believe, oh, that's a good
August
question.
5th?
It's the first Tuesday in August,
Yes.
I believe. So it's very early.
So what are the issues that are most important to you?
Well, in District 1, most people are really concerned about homelessness and the impacts of homelessness. And honestly, your audience is probably really much more concerned about impacts. But as you go out of the historic downtown core, people are interested or concerned about speeding through the neighborhoods. You know, they want to have their kids be able to play out front, and parking from some of the businesses have filtered into the neighborhoods, kind of stuffing. What's the word? Making parking unavailable for visitors and that sort of thing instead of the word. So, I mean, as you go out, there are other things that are concerning, but this year I think is going to be concentrated on the single issue of homelessness and the impacts of homelessness.
And that affects your district just because you're downtown, mostly on the north side all the way to Sumner and that side, correct?
That's right. And so past Nissan, Corum Nissan,
Yeah.
where you work, and then on the west side we go almost to WSU, and on the south we include Pioneer Park and also Spark Stadium. It's kind of a rough area.
And you've been in this area for a long time. You're 4th generation Puyallup citizen?
I think, let me see,
Okay.
4th generation. Did you say 3rd? 4th generation, right. So both sets of grandparents moved here from other areas, and I think both sets of grandparents are from the mother country, Germany.
Oh.
Yeah, or Austria. So we, okay, Billy, you have to call back.
I was
So-
about to do not disturb, but anyway, sorry about that.
So you know, my grandpa, I was really close to. He was his property was 123 4th Street Southeast. So that he lived in my district, and his property, the kind of, well, he had 2 lots, but he was the town junk man. And basically he recycled metal, and that's one of the things that he did to for a living. But he did that because as a young man he lost one leg and several fingers as a logger before OSHA, before safety standards. But he always made it. He was always a hard worker, and but the thing that I found out after I got elected was that he died in a tragic car accident in 1969 on River Road, and we miss him a lot. I still miss him. But because of his death, the Meeker Mansion, the Historical Society, was able to purchase his property so that they didn't sell the property underneath the Meeker Mansion, because they needed, the business that is now multi-care needed some parking, a larger parking lot. When I grew up, it was a boat processing farm, manufacturer, and it had loading docks and everything. So they had renovated that property to be a business park or offices. So I feel really proud that that we were able to contribute to maintaining the historical significance of Meeker Mansion where it is.
Absolutely. You know, Tara and I toured that facility, gosh, a month or two ago.
Yeah.
And it was incredible to learn about the history of Meeker Mansion and Ezra Meeker. And it's important to continue to educate people in our area about how did we become this great, incredible community that we are today? How did we start, and what is the kind of significance of our beginnings?
Yeah.
And how do you take that into, you know, continuing that education about those beginnings and continuing to kind of hold on to that legacy? And, you know, you're kind of sounds like your family was there early on,
Yeah.
and legacy in this area is important to you. Would you say that's a lot of the reason for kind of initially running, or that you care a lot about our area and the kind of the direction that it goes?
I do. I mean, there's no way I can clearly articulate the feeling that or the connectedness I have to Puyallup. And, you know, considering that Puyallup was established in 1860 ish, I'm not sure of the exact date. And
Somewhere in there.
And our family came to Puyallup about 40 years later. And so, you know, I know that when I grew up, I loved Puyallup. I cruised the Loop. I'm a part of that car culture that was established by a lot of the car dealers here. And my thought of that pride is that I want to continue to make it a great place to be, and a great place to connect with other people and to welcome other people, because we are growing. And how do we fold those into the Puyallup family? You know, so I look at it as kind of Puyallup has always been about inclusion, you know, and I know that because my grandparents came from, you know, Europe and emigrated here. They moved to Wisconsin and then they moved here. And so that's how I grew up thinking Puyallup was, is that we helped each other. My grandparents did have some problems, and they always had family, and they always had friends that would help them out.
It truly is the land of the generous people, and I know I've experienced that being new to the community.
Oh, that's
and it's
good
great to hear that, you know, you have that feeling, and that it's kind
Yes.
of it's been ongoing from its very beginnings,
Yes.
is helping one another and being a real community.
Yeah.
I see we have a few new people tuning in. Want to ask, will you be oh, yes, we are interviewing all of the candidates.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and answer that. We are interviewing all of the Puyallup and Sumner City Council candidates
for the 2019 races. So we're going to be busy this summer, making sure we hit both cities and everybody that's running. I think there's 4 races in each city, Sumner and Puyallup. So we have a lot to do. So Tara, Ivy, and I, and several others, we just finished the Leadership Institute here at the Puyallup Sumner Chamber of Commerce. It was a very good class instructed by Kent Hojum. But we learned a lot about leadership. So what is your leadership style, Robin?
Oh, and I'm glad you brought up the Leadership Institute, because I am a 2018 graduate.
Woo!
Nice.
And I thought I wanted to come because I just to really get integrated into the chamber. And I thought, well, you know, I have so much leadership experience through the military and leadership training. You know, they start training us when we're, you know, polybog. So, and I thought, well, I want to contribute in a way. But I got so much out of it. And I think if you're watching Ken Hojum, you're a rock star.
Rock
Okay.
star.
So, to answer your question, I see myself as, and I don't mean this in any weird way or some, but I'm a visionary, I'm a long range kind of leader. I see distance, and to a certain extent, I see myself as a transformational leader, and when given the opportunity. By nature, politics is kind of a competitive group, and sometimes it's not as difficult as it was in the military, where it's very hierarchical. I was just reading some things that David Covey wrote. He's the author of The 7 Habits of Effective and The Speed of Trust. But he talks about leadership and the journey through, I wrote some notes, so I'm reading, through independence to interdependence. And I liked how he kind of tied the 7 habits into these 3 sections. But on either side, the bookends are independence and interdependence. And I think what David Covey says is that independence is where you have that private victory, where you're starting to really get good at what you're doing and you feel confident about it. You're past kind of your polywog stage, and you can sit in your job and think, I'm the one who can answer the problems. And so there's a mastery aspect to it. But when you get to the other side of that is that interdependence, where you realize as a leader that you need other people in order to really move the organization forward. It goes from that private victory, he calls it, of I can fix your problem, to a public victory where we all are winning. And so that's how I see leadership, is I'm always looking for the win-win. And, I've had some really great successes, especially with, the senior staff at Puyallup, where we've worked through issues to come to a really good place. And
What do you mean by senior staff?
like the
City manager? Okay.
assistant city manager, usually director and above
Okay.
is senior leadership. But and yesterday, in fact, I had a great conversation with the library director.
Oh.
We just talked about that leadership component and what's important for an organization.
You mentioned successes. What would you say in your last, 4 years has been your greatest success or been your biggest challenge, or what, talk about, I guess, either one, both of them. Typically,
Yeah.
my greatest successes are my biggest challenges. So maybe
Yeah.
that's true for you.
It totally is true for me. I think when you say success, a lot of times we say, well, where have you been able to come clear on the issues that you ran on last time? I will say that in the first 2 years, I was able to get an ordinance through that, and this may not be a good thing for some people, but when we have significant drought periods, that we restrict fireworks, because I think they're a fire hazard. And I see my job as ensuring the safety and security of my constituents. So, but kind of going back to that interdependence, is that first 2 years, the constituents said, hey, we want you to work with other council members. And I think I came to council on the sort of a reputation of being an activist, where I did the recall. I was critical of some of the decisions that city council made the year before. And so, I had to kind of almost repair that and show over and over and be consistent that this is something I will always work with a team that wants to work with me. And those first 2 years, we really did come together. And we had dissension, but we also had cohesion. And I will say that I have to say, and I'm stuttering because we've come to a full stop in this last 2 years around that. So I don't think that there's been any real successes in the last 2 years, because there's been a lot of dissension, and it's not something that I can do much to work towards to fix. It's to me, it kind of crosses ethical boundaries for me. So what are the questions?
One thing.
How about now? Are we good? All right, so I'm assuming we're good. We're gonna keep going. You know, there's something that Robin and I kind of have in common, though a little bit different. I used to be a nuclear engineer for the Navy, and you have a very long career in the Navy.
That's right. And I, worked at McDonald's here downtown, and I was going. I was in management, but I realized that I wanted more, and my career plans kind of fell apart. And so I got to about 19, and I realized that I needed to do something drastic, and I had this, thought, join the Navy. I have no idea where it came from, but I joined the Navy right after my 20th birthday, and I was an electronics technician, which is very similar.
Oh, very cool.
And ended up making it a career, and I got commissioned about at my halfway point, and then just led technicians.
Welcome back, Luke.
Hi.
All right, go ahead. So you were leading technicians.
And spent 23 and a half years in the Navy, and came back to spend a lot more time with my family.
Very cool. So 23 and a half years in the Navy. That's pretty incredible. What did you learn from the Navy? I'm sure you learned a lot there, but what did you learn from the Navy that you've really carried into, your life in general, and also your kind of life as a councilwoman?
Yeah, I think the thing that I learned, and I guess the best way to illustrate it is being on a ship, is that...
I can picture it.
Yeah, you can picture it. Is when you get underway, you're technically, or fundamentally, I should say, a floating gas can. And so safety and security becomes a huge issue, but also the other people on your crew. Now, there's a crew on my ship of about 350 people, and of those 350 people, I may have liked a handful, and or spent time with even a few less than that. Because they're, first of all, officers can't fraternize with enlisted people, but it goes further than that. But I think when there's an emergency, every single person on that ship is my best friend. And if it comes to, let me go back to those ships that ran aground a couple years ago. There was somebody who, in order to save the ship, dug down the door to the berthing, which isolated 6 sailors, and they eventually drowned. Each one of those people I would have felt personally responsible for if I'd have been that person who dug that door down. So when I look at public service, I consider every single person in my district part of my extended family. Now, I will say, I have detractors out there, and just like there are people in your family that you can't communicate with, I think at those times it's good that we have a second council member for this district, because not everybody is going to be able to relate to me. But I'm talking on an emotional and mental level, that everybody who works and lives in City of Puyallup is part of my family, and I take it that seriously.
So that's a good segue to these last couple questions. So the first, what are some defining differences between you and your opponent? Then we'll move on to the homelessness and housing options. But
Okay.
what's the defining differences?
Yeah, so start out with Matt Kyle. He is very devoted to his family, and he has a wonderful family. He's been significantly impacted by the homeless that go along. It's kind of a pathway to the trail
Where he lives.
where he
Yeah.
lives. Yeah, his home.
Yeah.
And he's had some significant incidents which are troubling. And let's see, I just lost. I'm sorry, Curtis. Your name went out of my head. Curtis Thiel,
Curtis.
who I have known for a long time and I have a lot of respect for. I think that both of these gentlemen have something they can contribute to our community. What the issue is around homelessness is not a one and done. The homelessness problem that we're having has to be a strategic focus, and the difference is that I have 4 years of knowledge and experience, and I have a lot of things that are starting to come into play that, I mean, I don't want to broadcast here because sorry, because they're not fully in play, but I've been told that there is somebody who will put up a significant amount of seed money for services, but we need to have a functional council, a council that works together, supports each other, and understands what we're doing. We have to have a pathway. And so my pitch this year at the retreat for the retreat is where we develop the council priorities for the year. I pitched for us to develop a strategic plan to address homelessness and the impacts of homelessness. I'll say that over and over, homelessness and the impacts of homelessness, because that's what we're looking at. We don't have a strategic plan. I have been pitching this for 4 years, and I have not gotten any support. And I don't think that we can do a lot with, say, economic development or fully implement economic development until we address this social issue. Now, there was something I was going to say, is that if I can segue into, is that I have the experience around this issue. I know a way forward. I have a lot of people in place. What I need is a council that will work with me to implement it. The homelessness issue is a very serious issue in Puyallup. I'd like to start out, and I'm speaking now directly to constituents, is we have to set the legal framework for this. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals stated in the Martin versus the City of Boise lawsuit that if a municipality does not have sheltering services, that they cannot fully endorse their sit-lie laws and, to a certain extent, their camping ordinance. What happens then is that word gets out about the City of Puyallup being a pretty easy place to hang out for some of the bad actors. And we are tying the police department's hands when we don't address our key services. So until we can address that, we are not going to have any change in our homeless situation. And so tying that back is, I don't really believe that concept has gotten through to the community. From my doorbelling experience, people don't understand. They understand when it's explained like that. But what we have to do is we have to have some type of shelter. So once that happens, and I'll go back to the shelter in a minute because I know that'll kind of blow things up, but once that shelter is established, our police can say, you can go to the shelter, or and then they can enforce the sit-lie laws, which means that the people that don't want help, they're going to be asked to maybe find another place to bunk for the night. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there are bad actors out there. Yes, it's unsightly, but we have had I talked to one of my former school teachers, middle school teachers, and she agreed with me, even when I was going to high school, and is that there have been homeless people here. My mom can remember them. So I bring to the table a whole bunch of information, and I have a planned way forward. Now, let me just finally address the homeless shelter. The seed money would go to some sort of shelter that that is run well. I know that Ording opened a recovery cafe, and they have worked together with the city of Ording, and they have a very good relationship. That's what I would see, is something like the recovery cafe, which requires people to be sober for at least 24 hours. And they also have requirements to be part of their community. They have work requirements, that sort of thing. So I hope that I get the opportunity to support the citizens of Puyallup for another 4 years, so that we can walk through this, and we can walk through it together and be a better community as a result of our effort.
In closing, is there any last things you want to cover that we didn't maybe ask you, or?
You know what? There was a question on here. Is it okay if I get to it?
Yeah.
Patty Denny is one of our board directors, and she wants
Patty.
to know what are your feelings on property rights? I guess specifically the Knudsen property. Are you familiar with that, or
I am.
What are your thoughts on
Right.
property rights?
No, and
it's a broad question.
Yeah, no, I know exactly. I think. Hi, Patty. So the issue, Patty went through the Leadership Institute with me. So,
fun.
So that is a double-sided question, Patty. Personally, I am not. I'm very much supporting property rights. I do not support eminent domain unless it is necessary for the safety and security of my constituents. The Knudsen property has, we are still in litigation with them, so I have to speak very broadly, is that the citizens of Puyallup do not support having warehouses. So, my personal feelings aside, I really can't, I have to support the citizens of Puyallup, but aside from that, I really can't comment because it is in, the Knudsen property is still in litigation.
Well, thank you for answering as best as you can. And Luke, you had some final thoughts? I kind of interrupted
Oh,
you
no,
on there.
that was good that we covered, because Patty's asked each candidate that same question, so
Okay.
it's good that we get consistency on that. But actually, it's to you, Robin. Is there anything you want to lastly say to?
Absolutely not. Was there any other questions at all?
No.
No? Okay.
No other questions.
Okay, great.
People
Well,
might ask some questions later on, so check back on the video
I
and
will do.
continue to ask questions. If you watch this and you want clarification on it, make sure that you leave a comment, and Robin will Robin, we'll get back to you.
I will.
We might have
Yeah.
had some camera troubles, but at least
Yeah,
you can hear us.
sorry.
good, so
Yeah.
sorry about that. So.
But thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to our Chamber Chatter Live candidate interview series. We've really enjoyed having Robin here, and I've learned a lot more about her, and excited to kind of watch your city council race.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.